How capitalism can't handle climate change. Let's see what they got.
This episode was made in collaboration with Our Changing Climate. Be sure to check out their video after this.
I've never seen this show before.
The world faces a lot of challenges, from poverty to war to famine to disease.
And that is just Russia.
Our species has a lot of problems that need solving. But there's one problem that is not...
It's always so sad, right? How you look at the human race and you realize that most problems are kind of easily fixable. If you will just fucking start using our heads and stop being so greedy, man.
Only incredibly threatening on its own, but also makes all the other problems much worse. Climate change, the result of natural atmospheric changes and intense human activity and pollution, poses an existential threat to not only humans, but countless other species around the world. If we're going to mitigate some of the worst effects of climate fallout, we need to start making real changes immediately. Unfortunately,
that's the point. Every scientist, every real scientific source tells you we need to immediately act. Do you see that anywhere? Do you see capitalism, the leading classes, the 1%, the companies do anything? No. What are they doing? What happens when you turn on your TV? Hi guys, I am the leader of all the coal plants in the world, and I vow. Get this. You know, my daughter, she looked at me on the dinner table. She was like, "Dad, you gotta save the world." And I was like, "You know what, kid? I'm gonna save the world. I hereby vow on my life that by 2200 we will stop coal mining." Woo! Yeah, fuck yeah! Give me the green ribbon, guys. We're gonna go out 2200, guys. Don't worry, guys. No more coal cars until the year 5000, guys. We're gonna fix it.
That doesn't look like it's going to happen. In this episode, we're going to talk about the basics of climate change and why capitalism is not equipped to handle the crisis. Before we get into the analysis, I think we should start with some simple facts about climate change. I'll start at square zero. Climate change is happening. Regardless of whether or not you think humans are causing or worsening the problem, you cannot claim that we are not witnessing serious changes to the planet's climate. The evidence is sound and overwhelming. The only detractors are people who are either A, not experts in the field, or B, paid by the oil and gas industry to spread disinformation. Usually both.
Oof. When he shows Tucker Carlson. Oof.
Even if you're not convinced by the consensus of the entire scientific community, the effects of climate change are something you can see for yourself. I recently visited Majuro in the Marshall Islands as part of a documentary crew. We saw homes literally being consumed by the sea. Islands and coastal regions are going underwater, and this is only one of the side effects of climate change.
Dutch people in the chat, it's time to get scared, man.
Okay, I hope we're on the same page here. Climate change is happening, and the fallout is already doing serious damage to communities around the world. There's a certain type of person who always appears in the comments of this type of video to say things like, "Humans have nothing to do with climate change. This is just a normal part of Earth's climate cycles." I'm sure
shaking my head, lol, think again, second thought. Oh my god. Is he in chat right now? Are you here?
There will be some of these people on this video too. To address those people, you're wrong. And even if you were completely correct, the consequence...
I genuinely believe, though, this is a really interesting thing that we see nowadays with Corona, war, and climate change. I often think that a lot of people that deny certain things like Corona existing, climate change existing, Putin is a nice guy, I think these people are not evil or stupid. I think this is their way to cope. At least some of them, not all of them, but some. It's just too terrifying to their brains that the world is dying and Putin might actually be evil and Corona might actually be a thing. And they're just coping hard, man, you know? And they need someone to hold their hand. They need someone to hold their hand, you know?
Consequences of the changing climate are so severe that we must take significant steps to mitigate the loss of life and spiraling global...
What's just trolls? I think in the internet we also see a thing nowadays. For example, in the HOI4 community, we see young men, it's mostly young men, that just love trolling. They love being anti, they love being against something just to create a reaction. It's basic psychology. You have these young kids that sit at home all day and they feel a bit lost. They have no girlfriend, their dad isn't loving them, they're not proud of them. They feel a bit lost. So by becoming trolls in the internet, for example, in the HOI4 community, am I right, guys? They troll, they trigger people, they scream the N-word in a game to get a reaction out of it, to feel something, you know? And these people are also in politics, which is a bit scary.
Crises. Think of it like this. If you're out for a walk and someone is driving straight at you and you're clearly going to be run over, what would you do? You'd do everything in your power to avoid being run over, right? Does it really matter whether the driver is purposely trying to kill you or if their brakes are out?
That's how it works, man.
No.
I learned that with Corona. The human race is reactive, not proactive. We react to things. The problem, the trickiness with climate change is it's a slow thing. It doesn't happen tomorrow or in 5 years, man. It's slow, and humans are way too short-sighted with that stuff.
Because the end result is undesirable either way. The things that led up to you having to avoid getting hit by a car shouldn't factor into your consideration of how to respond. The same is true of climate fallout. So, with that out of the way, let's look at a few basic facts about climate change and its disastrous effects. We'll start with the bad news. Even if we completely stopped emitting greenhouse gases today, we've already set in motion a scenario which will inevitably release more warming agents that have been trapped in ice for thousands or millions of years. This will cause serious problems the world over. Already hot areas...
Like there's a chance, right? I'm not going to say it's a fact, I'm not educated enough, but there's a chance that we're already in one of the worst scenarios. Like, one of the worst.
This will face record heat waves and droughts, which will adversely affect food production. Continued warming and acidification of the world's...
And then I feel like, why do people like Elon Musk talk about overpopulation? The biggest problem is that people in Japan wear diapers now. More old people in Japan wear diapers than babies now.
Oceans will destroy fragile ecosystems like coral reefs and threaten fish populations which billions of people rely on for food. Islands and coastal regions are at risk of flooding or complete submersion, as I documented in the Marshall Islands. As warm seasons last longer, disease-carrying insects will become more prevalent and occupy larger areas, infecting countless people.
I am telling you, man, this is my prediction for the future. Scandinavia will be the paradise of the future. I guarantee you that Norway, Sweden, etc., they will totally close their borders in like 50 years. They will let no one in anymore, and they're just going to protect themselves from everyone, man. Because everybody wants to go north, get to their water sources, their fresh water sources from the lakes and the mountains. They want to go to the coldness, and they're just gonna... they're already doing it. I once was checking out how to immigrate to Norway, and if you're over 35, Norway already doesn't take you anymore. It's much harder, man. Like, Norway already has climate refugee laws.
People with life-threatening illnesses. Farming regions will be at tremendous risk of...
Like Canada, Scandinavia, unfortunately Russia even, they're gonna be the big winners of global warming, especially if they have water access.
Crop failure as local weather behaves erratically or changes completely. In the developing world, crop failure and drought will combine to create massive water and food shortages, resulting in unspeakable death toll.
Yeah, but the biggest problem is obviously our underpopulation, yes.
And the worsening of the world's ongoing poverty and migrant crises.
Norway? No,
Sooner or later,
the
oil will cease to be the most valuable resource to imperialist nations. It will be replaced by water. When the most...
The TommyKay Water Wars, man, huh? In many years, when I'm long dead, they're gonna quote me. TommyKay is leading scientist on Twitch TV. He told us about the Water Wars.
Basic necessity of life becomes a target for military action and occupation. We will begin to see suffering unlike the...
I genuinely believe, dude, I'm gonna be very arrogant here. I think I'll be very rich in 50 years. Because I invest a lot of money into water. And I think in 50 years, the water industry is gonna be fucking huge, dude. I really believe that. I think I will be a very rich old man. I mean, a lot of people think that.
The human race has ever seen. But this video isn't about all the specific details of climate fallout. I've covered that topic in previous videos if you're interested. What we really need to talk about is how the current dominant economic system presents an insurmountable obstacle to mitigating climate disaster. So, let's take a look at a few of the actions, as determined by the IPCC, which must be taken immediately or at least in the very near future. According to the IPCC's Climate and Land Report, we need to implement comprehensive early warning systems for extreme weather, as well as other observational programs to monitor land use and degradation, biodiversity, and the spread of disease-bearing insects. We need to fund programs that will encourage sustainable...
Exactly, checks. That's why I invest in water. He's saying, I think we can hear him.
The economist who first predicted the 2008 financial crash and shorted the American housing market now only invests in water.
He's talking about Michael Burry from The Big Short. If you watch The Big Short, which a movie that changed my life, the final scene is Michael Burry only invests in one thing now, water. And then I started researching that stuff while he's doing that. Bill Gates, the same, right? Dude, the real intelligent people, I'm not talking about you, me, XQC, or politicians. The real intelligent people, like Michael Burry, Bill Gates, etc., they all buy a massive water. They get water stocks, they buy farmland with access to water. Water. So if these people invest in that, what should you do? Should you go crypto, NFTs? Huh? Should you go there, or should you do what these guys are doing? I don't fucking know.
Sustainable land management, which will prevent desertification and famine. We need to invest in land restoration.
They do to fight climate change. Warren, that is the dumbest thing I read all stream. These guys are capitalists. They care about profit. You think they invest into water ETFs and water companies to fight climate change? Dumbest thing I heard today. Thank you, Warren.
Damaged or endangered soil and biomes back from the brink. We must drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions across all sectors, including oil and gas, agriculture, transportation, and leisure. And we need to do all of these things in just a few years to prevent global catastrophe. Now, let's consider the nature of the roadblock that is capitalism. To offer a simple definition, capitalism is an economic system in which the means of production are controlled by private owners and corporations. The primary driver of capitalism is the profit motive, the desire for ever-increasing profits and the accumulation of capital.
Motive has to change.
If a system demands greater profits every year, if it demands infinite growth, it will inevitably run into the very real problem of existing on a planet with finite resources. If we look at the decisions made by large multinational corporations, say Exxon for example, it's clear that those decisions are made based solely on the amount of short-term profit they will produce. Back in the 70s, when Exxon was at the forefront of climate research, their scientists determined just how detrimental fossil fuels are to the planet. Instead of making this information public and working with policymakers to find a solution, they marked those documents confidential and launched a decades-long propaganda campaign to sow doubt on the
Donald Trump made the Exxon leader his foreign minister,
effects of greenhouse gas emissions. By doing this, they secured their short-term profits at the expense of the long-term survival of millions of human beings. The same is true of giant companies like...
Has there always been infinite growth, though? That's not the question. He says we live in a system that always tries for infinite growth, and that's a correct statement, I would think. It doesn't matter what you talk about, growth and degrowth cycles. How does that matter here in this equation?
Amazon. Jeff Bezos, Amazon CEO and the richest person on the planet, could easily afford to make Amazon employees the best paid workers in the world, thereby securing a happy and loyal labor force and positive public perception.
But that's not how that works, Jeff.
Instead, Amazon is among the worst places to work in the country. We routinely hear horror stories about how employees have to pee in bottles because they'll be fired if they take a bathroom break, how they've had to ignore a coworker who had died on the floor. Reducing overhead by exploiting workers yields greater short-term profits, but it turns the public against the company, causes massive turnover, and damages their own long-term survival by ensuring its workers have neither the time nor the disposable income to buy their products. This kind of behavior is common among capitalist companies, including many smaller ones. Today, it's exceptionally rare to find a job that pays a reasonable salary or offers benefits of any kind. So, if we can't count on capitalism to even take care of the workers that keep the system running, how can we expect it to make provisions for people on the other side of the world, or who haven't even been born yet? The scientific community knows that nothing will get done unless there's a profit to be made. So their reports are...
And that's the thing. That's how you could change capitalism. You have to have a capitalism where they make profit of climate-friendly stuff, and that's where we can help, right? That's where we can help by buying climate-friendly products. I don't know how really it's very expensive sometimes and stuff, but you know, buying electric cars, getting certain food that is grown biologically and stuff, blah blah blah, and that is actually a way how we can teach capitalism that there's a profit to be made there.
Often contain return on investment timelines and estimates. But if you look at their numbers, there's no way an oil executive or a cruise line CEO would go for it. Sustainable land management programs that might be profitable in 10 years? The cruise and oil industries are incredibly profitable now. Why would they take a reduction in profits when those profits are their sole motivating factor? And if the big lobbies won't go for it, neither will the politicians who rely on their donations. The most damaging industries also just so happen to have...
Electric cars won't fix climate change. No one said, Alter, you people. Jesus, man. Also, I'm trying to be cool here and objective and debate with people. Some people in chat, man, are so fucking far gone, man.
Have the largest political
sometimes
lobbies. They make tremendous profits from exploiting workers at home and abroad.
Are you like this in school? Like the teacher says something and you completely turn it the other way, man? Like, Jesus Christ, man.
Not to mention the limited resources of the Earth itself. And they're willing to shell out tens of millions of dollars to fund politicians and propaganda campaigns so they can keep doing it. Even if you're inclined to be optimistic and hope that these people will have a change of heart, just look at the historical record. When multinational companies set up shop in Central America, they made enormous profits. They could have paid their local workers a good wage, or at least a living wage. Instead, they were little more than slaves. The workers were brutalized by corporate paramilitary groups. They had their families threatened if they weren't productive enough. Some parents even received the severed hands of their children if they didn't meet their required quota.
Holy shit.
If these people were willing to
What the
maim
fuck?
or even kill their workers, why would we assume they would be willing to make massive concessions to help mitigate climate fallout? To take a more recent example, I live in Texas.
The temperature is the lowest they've seen in decades.
More than 620,000 waking up without power in Texas this morning.
Texas has its own electrical grid, separate from the country's two primary grids. The goal was to completely deregulate the Texas energy market to free it from the evils of bureaucracy. The end result, as we should expect, was rampant corruption, price gouging, and cost cutting. Officials decided not to take
You can't just
precautionary
do it.
measures like
Humans always
winterproofing
just
our
wanna
electrical
suffer.
infrastructure. Because of
And
this,
follow the money.
millions of Texans lost power, had no access to clean drinking water,
Oh, shit.
and some even froze to death in their own homes. This example is perhaps even more damning than the previous one, because it deals specifically with infrastructure. The majority of climate mitigation measures will be investments in infrastructure.
To me, it always feels like we're in a downward spiral of hell. We are in a situation where it's unfixable. Because if someone will try to fix it, a politician or party, they will lose so many votes. The way you fix our capitalism, the way you make it good for climate change, the way you fix climate change, is that, and this is my opinion, this is how it seems to look like on a scientific background. You need to force certain things on humans. You have to take a Western human being that is so used to freedom and whatever they want, and you have to force certain things on them. Certain products are not available anymore. Certain things are just harder to obtain right now, blah, blah, blah. And once they do that, these people will stop voting for them. They will riot and I'm voting for Trump, I'm voting for AFD, Alter. And then the person that wants to change everything will lose the vote. We are in a circle that is not capable of ever fixing this, and that scares the fucking hell out
If
of me.
these critical
And that's why I genuinely believe we need an overlord. We need an AI overlord, alien overlord, a green dictatorship. It's the only way we can save the planet. You can laugh at me right now. Ha ha ha, what is he saying? I genuinely believe in 100 years from now, we will look back at history and we will say, bro, if someone would have forced us to take care of global climate change, we wouldn't be in a situation like this right now. I genuinely believe in that. The truth is the truth.
projects are avoided simply as a way
Future
to
will
cut
tell
costs,
if I'm right or wrong.
people will die. And unfortunately, I think this negligent behavior is what we need to expect from
Human
private
beings are
corporations
not
and
capable of fixing
corporate-owned
this stuff.
politicians.
It's in their nature.
The only
I'm the
goal
same.
of
I'm not even saying I'm
capitalism,
better.
the only
I'm a fucking idiot too. I drive my car and do dumb shit, man. I need someone to force me. Tommy, you're not driving your car this week. If you do it, we're gonna fuck you up. Oh, fuck. Okay. That's what needs to happen, bro.
thing that
Thank you,
matters
Moreos.
is profit. Profits must increase every year. The entire history of capitalism
Yeah,
is
this is
the
a good
history
channel, man.
of the exploitation of working people, especially by multinational corporations and the US military operating in the global south.
What AI
Climate
then? Isn't
change
that just the same argument as technology? When I say we need an AI overlord, you could maybe feel, if your IQ goes a little bit, if it scratches to 100, that when Tommy says AI overlord, he's kind of memeing and doesn't think there's gonna be an AI fucking overlord, man.
Is shaping up to be the single most expensive challenge humanity has ever faced.
We need a
the
green
world is
technocratic
relying on the
authoritarian
wealthiest
regime. Yes.
nations, those that
Yes.
disproportionately contribute to emissions and
never
consumption,
happen.
to lead the way in fighting climate change. As we've seen in the last decade, there hasn't been a single administration willing to take steps bold enough to meet the challenge. All we've seen is politicians paying lip service to establish science while peddling woefully insufficient policies that are rarely acted upon. If
Coming,
we
Lisa.
want to ensure a livable future for the
Need to
human
go.
race, we must move past capitalism. Capitalism is incapable of solving the problems it creates. It is entirely beholden to the profit motive, and no amount of flowery language, greenwashing, or reform will ever change that.
I like this channel, man. Good
If
channel.
you'd like to learn more about the
What is this channel, man? Second follow. He's big. Damn, that's a really good channel. What are you still doing here, mate? Jeez. Well, if you want to see more, click these videos. Have fun. Looking good, boy.